Hey y'all, it's Leah. I am here to talk about some basic things that we can add to a junk journal when you're getting started. So, we're going to go through 10 of these items that are just kind of really easy things to add, don't require a lot of tools or a lot of prep work or a lot of materials. And so we're just going to go through them and then we'll check off our list as we go. So the first thing is just a top pocket. So it's a pocket that has, usually you put like a little thumb notch or something. I just use a circle punch and put it in. I always punch upside down so I can see where I'm punching. But you can see that I just kind of went less than halfway down. You don't want to go more than halfway because then you end up with weird kind of it starts curving in. But I go, about a third down, third of the way down. It's totally up to you. And then punch that out. And then that creates that little thumb notch, which just allows your items to go in and out a little bit easier. I did round the corners. That's my two tools that I recommend if you want to buy anything would be a corner rounder. This one has three sizes on it, so small, medium, large. And then this is just a 1-inch circle punch. And these are probably the two things that I use the most aside from scissors and glue and a paper trimmer. So those are pretty handy to have around. I think it just gives the corner rounder, just gives it a really nice look when you're doing that. So a top pocket just means that your stuff is going to go in the top. So if I glued this down, I could slide this card into this pocket. You can also decorate your pockets, but we're not going to get into that today. We're just kind of showing the basic elements. You would glue it on your two sides and then across the bottom. And a trick for gluing is I always hold the side that I'm not going to glue on. So if I'm holding here, that means I'm only going to put glue on the side, the bottom, and this other side. I'm not putting it across the top because that's where my hand is. So that's just kind of a little handy trick that I picked up. As far as size of pockets, it is completely up to you. It might depend. You might have something specific that you want to put in this pocket already. And so you would kind of make your pocket to size. Otherwise, if I'm just making pockets, which I often do, is I just kind of add a bunch of pockets to my journals and then I go back and fill them. I like to have them a little bit less than, it's about a 1/2 inch shorter than the width of my journal. And then I kind of use the rule of thirds where so I'd go about a third of the way up the page. This is a little bit more than a third. I don't like to measure if I don't have to. That's the cool thing about junk journaling is it doesn't have to be precise. It is meant to just be very organic. And so anytime that I don't have to measure, I don't. So that is a top pocket. Okay. So the next one, so we'll check that off of our list. The next one is a side pocket. So you're still cutting that same pocket shape. I still went about a 1/2 inch shorter than my page. And still, this one's a little closer to a half of the page. But notice I put my thumb notch on the side because this means, and I'm just going to glue it on the top, the left side, and then across the bottom. And of course, you can do it this way depending on how, if I was doing it on this side of the page, on the left side, probably off camera, if I was doing it on the left side of the page, then I would have my thumb notch over to the left, okay? Because that way I can get things. It's really hard once your pages are in your signature to get something out in on this side and, close to the center of your journal. Okay, so I would do this, and then my items can slide in and out of here. You can even put like a little tab or something just to kind of let whoever's looking through your journal know that they can pull something out of there. Okay, so that is a side pocket. Okay, so next we're going to talk about some tuck spots. So tuck spots are usually glued on 2 sides, whereas pockets are glued on 3 sides. That is not a hard and fast rule. It just depends. But a side tuck often can be a triangle. So you just kind of, you can start with a square and then cut it in half. Or I just sort of took my paper and cut a triangle off of it. And so I would glue it on the left and across the bottom, and then I can slide things in and out of here. Okay. You can also use the card. You could use a journal card, or anything, a piece of ephemera or whatever. I could glue that on 2 sides and then stick something in here. So it doesn't have to be a triangle. It can even be like a group of things. So there's lots of different ways that you can make tuck spots. But the general idea is that they're just glued on 2 sides and then things are being tucked into them. Okay. The exception to that is a side tuck. So this would go over on, I rounded the corners. That's the part that's going to go on the inside of the page. So this would be glued at the top, this side, and then across the bottom. Okay. And so then I can just slide things into here. This can be as wide as you want it to be. You could make it a half of the page if you wanted to, just depending on what items you're going to tuck into it. Okay. So we've done a side tuck and a corner tuck. Okay, did those out of order. I just realized that. Okay, then we have something called belly bands. So belly bands are things that are just glued on 2 ends, and then they can go vertically. So I can have it here, and I would just glue it at the top and the bottom. And then my items, whatever I want to put in here, just kind of sits inside of there. Okay. You can also do them horizontally. So I can have it going across this way, and then my items would slide in and out of the top. Okay. So those are belly bands. Okay. So those are kind of all of the things that hold things in our journals. Okay. So pockets, tucks, belly bands. Those are kind of the 3 main ways you're going to have items kind of placed into your journal. Aside from just like gluing it, you can also just glue things in. You can clip them in with paper clips or different kinds of things. So, but now we need to talk about, what do you put in the journal? What kinds of things are you going to put in there? So if you are working with a kit, you might already have some cards or some little tags that come in it that you can cut out. Like this one, this kit has a bunch of journal cards on it. So I could take this card and I could either leave the back as it is, but a lot of times a journal card is going to have maybe lined paper or blank paper. It's meant to be written on, and so I could add something to that. Okay. And I'll show you one of those that I did. But probably one of the most common things to do is to make a tag. Okay. And so for this one, I just cut a piece of cardstock, and your tags can be cardstock, or you can, if you want to make it a little stiffer, you can use packaging. If you have box, like a cereal box or any of those things, you can glue. I would glue it on the back, and then that way this side is blank, and you could still cover this with paper to make it a writing space, because it might be kind of hard to write on this shiny part. So it just depends on the look that you're going for. Okay. And then to make the tag, you are just going to take your scissors and cut one of the corner just to make that tag shape. So cut one of the corners and take that corner and then flip it over to the other side, and then use that as your guide of where to cut. And so that way your tags your corners are even, okay? And then you can punch a hole, you can put a slot, and then maybe put some ribbon on the top, or you can put a tab on the top, and then that way you can slide that in to, if you had a belly band here, I could slide my tag into there, okay? So those are tags. And then we've kind of talked about journal cards already, but I'll show you one that I did cover. So I did just take a piece of cardstock, and then on the back, I added just some lined paper. And so that's what we technically call a journal card, is something that can be written on the back, and then it's usually flat on the front. You can glue a few things onto it, but you want them to be flat items. I wouldn't put buttons or ribbon or any of that, because you want it to be a flat space that makes it easy to write on the back. Okay, so those are our journal cards. Next, we have something called an ATC. That stands for Artist Trading Card. Those are one of the specific things that do, or one of the things that have a specific size. So they are always 3.5 by 2.5. And the easiest way to remember that is they are the same size as a playing card. And often people will use playing cards to build their ATCs. These are often, as it's called, it's an artist trading card. People will make these and they'll put their information on the back, and then they will trade them with other creators. And so it's really fun to kind of see what other people can create and kind of collect them from all over the world. Okay, so for this one, I just took a piece of cardstock. I added another little piece on top of it. You can decorate it as much as you want. These can be built up. They don't have to be flat. They can have things that you can come off of the page. They don't have to stick within the 2.5 by 3.5. They can come off the card. But I would take this and then glue it to a playing card, and that way it just gives it a little more stability. Okay, so that's an ATC. Okay, the next two things are kind of some ways to add some interactive elements to your journals. Okay, and so one of them is a flip out. Okay, and this can also be a flip up or a flip down. So all I did was take a piece of cardstock, I rounded the corners on two sides, and then I folded one side about 1/2 inch. Okay, and so I just fold it like this, okay, to make my little flap that I can glue down. So I could glue this onto this page like this, and then I can flip it out. Okay, I could also glue it to the back of the page like this, like that. And so then it would flip out. And then on this side, I would cover that with something else. Okay, so those are flip outs. I could also put it at the top of the page, and then it becomes a flip up, and I can do it the same way where I can glue it this way. And then you can also put them at the bottom of the page where they would flip down. Okay, and often you can decorate both sides of these. Sometimes people will add paper to this side, so lined paper or blank paper, so you can use it as journaling space. And then in that case, again, just like the journal cards, you would want kind of flat embellishments on the front of this, maybe just some stickers or some die cuts, or some washi tape, just something to keep it very flat. Okay, so those are flip outs. And then the last thing we can add for some interactive elements is an envelope. Most of us have envelopes of different sizes, maybe even different colors in our stash around our house. You can use junk mail envelopes, work really well. And so it's very similar to a flip out. You've just got a ready-made flap already built in for you. So again, I could glue it down onto my page like this, and then I can flip it out, and now you have a cool thing, you've made your own little pocket here with your envelope. So now I can tuck things, I could have things tucked in to my envelope that way. You could have writing, this could also be writing space, so I could write something on a piece of paper and then tuck it into there. You can also glue these to the back, and if you glue it along kind of the flap, and then just glue on the top and the bottom, then it becomes another pocket or a little tuck, actually a little tuck spot. So if I had it like this, and if it was glued here, now I can add, this becomes another little tuck where I can add a journal card or a tag inside of there. Okay. All right, so that was our envelope. So I hope this gives you some ideas of just some really basic elements that you can add to your journals, especially as you're just getting started. These are some really, like I said, kind of easy things that you can do with just some scissors or a paper trimmer and maybe a couple of tools like a corner rounder and a circle punch. If you have those, you can always just use scissors. You can definitely just kind of round your corners on your own or cut a little divot in your things to make your little thumb notches as well. Okay, so I hope this helps, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.